Okay, what's her name?
What I have?
What's that?
What I have?
You have cannabis on you.
Oh,
Not
it's
illegal.
legal. Okay, exactly. Right.
DeAndre is restless with the officers.
Need some water or anything?
Yeah, I would like some water because, you guys got to...
Hey, you need some water?
Yeah.
Okay, please, get you some water.
Is it okay if I walk around? Is it okay if I stand up and take a step, like a couple steps?
What you gonna do? Why you gotta do that? Pull your pants up or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
That's it.
You're fine.
He's doing his job. This man has done nothing but his job. I swear to you.
You need to sit back down in the chair, please.
Didn't you just say I could pace?
No, I didn't say you could pace. I thought you said you had to get the beat pants. If you could sit down in there, please. Thank
Do
you.
you mind if I pace? Is that illegal? I'm here. I'm handcuffed, ain't it?
We don't want that. We want you to sit down.
Exactly. I know you don't want that.
So if you could please sit down, guys.
I can't. I'm handcuffed.
Yeah, you can. You can sit down.
I literally can't do anything. I'm handcuffed.
You need to sit down.
Why are you guys scared of me for what?
I'm not scared. You need to sit down.
How? If I'm literally sitting here pacing handcuffed, I can't do shit.
You gotta
He
sit
searched
down.
me.
Okay, so what's your name? What they're gonna do is...
I literally asked if I was being detained. That man said no. And then he proceeded to ask me the same question over and over and over. And I said the same thing. And again, he's just not having it because he's got an attitude problem with me. I got an attitude problem too. I know I got one. I got one. That's why I'm not sitting down.
But you know I can make you sit down, so I'm not.
Do it.
What did I just say?
Do it. Sit me down.
I said I could.
Do it.
I'm not gonna do
Because
it.
you're scared. Exactly. I'm handcuffed.
Scared of what?
Do it.
You know, guy, we're not gonna get into this.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, weren't you just being mean to me though?
I'm not being mean to you.
I appreciate it.
I said you're pacing back and forth, and you said, "Well, set me down." And I said I could if I wanted to, but I don't want to.
He's behaving manically, pacing, and repeatedly questioning the officers. At one point, he starts to laugh and bang his head against the wall.
Don't do that.
They just fucking did that to me! Come in here!
Don't do that.
Do something! That's what I'm saying! Do something! Do something! Don't do that! That's what I'm saying! Don't do that!
There are sounds that should never exist in the life of an ordinary human being. Not because they are loud, but because they are painful. So painful that when we hear them, our first instinct is not to run toward them, but to freeze. The heart beats faster. The breath grows shallow. And in the mind, there is only one thought, hoping that what we heard was a mistake. It was not a scream like the ones in movies. Not a clear, desperate cry for help. It was a muffled sound, as if someone was trying to scream, but an invisible hand was tightening around their throat. The sound did not last long. It was broken, weak, easy to dismiss. And that is exactly what made it more terrifying than any loud scream. That night, in a quiet apartment building, the sound traveled upward, through ceilings, through thin walls, reaching the ears of people lying in bed, preparing to fall asleep. People just like us, exhausted after a long day, wanting nothing more than peace. They heard it, but they did not fully understand it. Or perhaps they did not want to, because acknowledging it would mean having to act. And acting sometimes requires more courage than a person has in an unexpected moment. Some turned their faces toward the wall. Some pulled the blanket higher. Some told themselves it was just an argument, that everything would be fine. In a culture of silence, people learn to live peacefully by not seeing, not hearing, and not getting involved. But there are sounds, even if they last only a few seconds, that are enough to change the fate of a human life, and enough to become a burden carried by those who heard them for the rest of their lives. If you had been there that night, if you had been lying in the apartment below, this story begins in that very moment. That night did not end with the sound of ambulance sirens. There were no red and blue lights tearing through the darkness. Everything remained quiet, as if nothing unusual had just happened. And in that silence, a person stepped out of the apartment with a completely calm demeanor. Security cameras captured the moment. The timestamp on the screen showed it was close to midnight. A man appeared in the hallway. His steps were slow, unhurried, not secretive. In his hands was a white laundry basket, the kind found in almost every home, an object tied to daily routines, to washing clothes, to the scent of detergent, to ordinary life. No one would look at that basket and think of death. The man bent down and lifted it. The movement was firm. His face showed no emotion, no sign of panic, no hesitation. He walked along the narrow path in front of the building, under dim yellow streetlights. His silhouette looked exactly like someone taking out the trash, an action so familiar that no one questioned it. The camera continued to follow as he turned behind a store, a place with less light, fewer people passing by, a place where things no one wants to see are often left behind. The white basket disappeared from the frame. What is frightening is not the act itself. It is the calmness, the way a human being can commit an irreversible act, yet keep an even breath, walk as if it were an ordinary evening, as if what lay inside that basket were not the remains of a life, but merely old items to be discarded. In that same moment, the entire neighborhood was asleep. Some people turned in their beds. Some dreamed harmless dreams. No one knew that just a few steps away, an invisible boundary had been crossed. And from that second on, no apology could ever repair what had been done. The night continued to move forward. But something was left behind forever in the darkness. And not all of it was inside the white basket. The courtroom was so silent that breathing could be heard. A heavy air pressed down on every row of seats. Those present carried many things with them: anger, grief, and the hope that justice might heal at least a small part of what had been lost. The perpetrator sat quietly, no longer showing the instability seen before. His face was empty, his gaze fixed on no one, as if all emotion had been drained away. As the evidence was read aloud, as each detail was repeated, there was no visible reaction, only a prolonged silence. A silence that sent chills through those listening. Lisa's family sat behind him. They listened to a story they never wanted to hear again. Every detail was a cut. Every description pulled their memories back to that night of horror. None of them found relief, because no sentence can return a daughter, a mother, a child who never had the chance to be born. When the sentence was delivered, the room did not erupt. There was no celebration, only bowed heads, quiet tears falling. Justice had been carried out, but it came too late, and it brought no peace with it. After the trial, people filed out. The perpetrator was led away. The victim's family returned to a life marked by absence. What remained was a nameless emptiness, one that time may soften, but will never completely fill. Because some losses do not end with a verdict, they stay. That afternoon, Heidi stood in front of her daughter's apartment with a feeling she could not name. There was no sound inside, no response to the messages she had sent since the night before. For a mother, that kind of silence is never normal. But it gnaws at every thought, every heartbeat. She stood there a few seconds longer than necessary, searching her mind for a reasonable explanation. Maybe her daughter was asleep. Maybe the phone battery had died. Maybe everything was still fine. But her body did not believe those assumptions. A mother's instinct arrives before logic, and once it appears, it is almost impossible to ignore. The door opened. The air in the apartment felt unnaturally heavy. Too quiet. Too empty. As if all life had been drained away. She did not need to go any further. She did not need to look for long. A few seconds were enough for a mother to understand that her daughter would never answer again. Her legs gave out. Her breathing became shallow and fast. In her mind, there was only one thought. Heidi stepped back outside the apartment. Her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped her phone. When she dialed 911, The voice on the other end of the line remained calm, professional, procedural. But Heidi's voice did not. It shattered, broke apart, came out in fragments. A mother trying to put into words something no one should ever have to say about their child. My daughter is dead. There are moments in life when time loses all meaning, when only raw pain remains, exposed, irreversible. For Heidi, that moment began the instant the apartment door opened. And it would follow her for the rest of her life. Before she became a name in a police file, Lisa Dodd was a very ordinary young woman. Ordinary in a way that makes it easy to forget that behind every case file is a life that was once lived. Lisa grew up in an imperfect family, but one filled with love. She was gentle, quiet, always trying to please others. Sometimes too much. Those who knew Lisa often remember her smile, a soft smile, unassuming. She worked hard, loved animals, found comfort in small, familiar things. Lisa did not dream of fame. She did not dream of leaving town. Her dreams were so simple they were often overlooked. A peaceful home, a family of her own, a life without fear. At that time, Lisa was pregnant, nearly 8 months along. Inside her was a baby girl. Her family affectionately called the baby Baby Bean, a small name filled with hope. Lisa would place her hand on her belly when she spoke about her child. Her voice softened. Her eyes changed. She spoke about the future with a fragile honesty, that her daughter would have a better life than she did, that everything would be okay. Becoming a mother was something Lisa looked forward to, not because she was fully ready, but because she believed love could fix everything, that when the baby arrived, the conflicts would fade, that new life could mend old fractures. It is a belief many women have carried, a belief held with the whole heart. But not every dream is given the chance to take shape. Some lives are cut short while they are still learning how to hope. Lisa was one of them, a young woman, a mother-to-be, a person who never had the chance to fully live the role she was stepping into. And that is what makes this story more painful than anything else. Violence rarely begins with a fist. It often begins with words, with glances, with questions that seem harmless but are repeated every day. Where are you going? Who are you meeting? Why are you home so late? Over time, those questions become control. And control, when disguised as care, is very difficult to recognize. Lisa lived inside a cycle like that. Peaceful days interrupted by sudden, unpredictable anger. When things were good, she believed she had been overthinking. When things were bad, she blamed herself. If only she were quieter, more gentle, then maybe everything would be different. That is how violence slowly erodes a person from the inside. After every injury came an apology. Not a cold apology, but one soaked in tears. Promises to change. Rare moments of tenderness that made it easy to believe the good was still there. And Lisa believed. Because believing is easier than accepting that the person you love is capable of causing pain. The cycle repeated itself. Tension, explosion, apology, hope, then tension again. Each turn left a new crack behind, but from the outside, very few people could see it. Lisa hid it behind a smile, behind silence, behind the familiar phrase that everything was fine. A culture of endurance keeps many people staying longer than they should. They fear judgment. They fear disappointing their families. They fear starting over. And when another life is growing inside them, that fear runs even deeper. Lisa hoped that becoming a mother would bring change. That love for the child would soften the anger. But violence does not disappear because of hope. Lisa was trapped in a relationship where the exit grew narrower with every passing day. Not because she was weak, but because she was human. And humans want to believe that tomorrow will be better than today. On the final day of her life, Lisa continued to do very familiar things. She sent messages. She waited for replies. She looked at her phone screen more often than usual, not out of curiosity, but out of worry. Each message carried a mix of anxiety and fragile hope. Hope that things had not yet reached the point of no return. In that, Lisa called her mother. Her voice sounded tired, but she tried to remain calm. She said she thought he had left, that maybe this time it was real. In her voice was a familiar sadness, the sadness of someone who has been disappointed many times but has not yet learned how to let go. Heidi listened. A mother who always wants to believe her child will be okay, that the storm will pass. Those brief conversations carried no sense of warning. Because no one knew it was the last time, Lisa still hoped. She hoped the silence was only temporary. That talking face to face would be better than cold messages on a screen. That evening, Lisa went out. No one knows what was on her mind. Perhaps she simply wanted everything to end, one way or another. Cameras captured the moment she returned to the apartment with the man. There were no signs of struggle. No panic. Just two people entering an enclosed space. It was the moment when hope was at its most fragile. And also the moment it was completely extinguished. No one heard the final message. No one heard the last call. On the final day of her life, Lisa continued to do very familiar things. She sent messages. She waited for replies. She looked at her phone screen more often than usual, not out of curiosity, but out of worry. Each message carried a mix of anxiety and fragile hope. Hope that things had not yet reached the point of no return. Lisa called her mother. Her voice sounded tired, but she tried to remain calm. She said she thought he had left, that maybe this time it was real. In her voice was a familiar sadness, the sadness of someone who has been disappointed many times but has not yet learned how to let go. Heidi listened. A mother who always wants to believe her child will be okay, that the storm will pass. Those brief conversations carried no sense of warning. They did not sound like farewells. They sounded exactly like calls any family might have. And that is why, later on, every word became unbearably heavy. Because no one knew it was the last time. Lisa still hoped. She hoped the silence was only temporary, that a meeting could resolve everything, that talking face to face would be better than cold messages on a screen. That is how people often persuade themselves when they are not ready to face the truth. That evening, Lisa went out. No one knows what was on her mind. Perhaps she simply wanted everything to end, one way or another. Cameras captured the moment she returned to the apartment with the man. There were no signs of struggle. No panic. Just two people entering an enclosed space. It was the moment when hope was at its most fragile. And also the moment it was completely extinguished. No one heard the final message. No one heard the last call. Only the silence began to stretch on. And this time, it was no longer waiting. After all sound faded away, the apartment slipped into a different state. No more chaos. No more struggle. Only arrangement remained. Cold. Intentional. As if a task needed to be completed. The act of handling the body did not happen in panic. It happened in silence. In movements carried out step by step. The man did not flee. He did not call anyone. He did not seek help. He stayed, faced what he had done, and continued. That is what makes it most difficult to accept. There are actions that, once committed, mean a person has crossed a boundary with no return. Hesitation vanishes. All that remains is a complete detachment from another person's pain. In that moment, Lisa was no longer seen as a human being, no longer a young woman, no longer an expectant mother. She became something that needed to be concealed. Everything was done with a terrifying neatness, as if life itself could be reduced, placed into a familiar object, and carried away like taking out the trash. The ordinariness of the act is what makes it so chilling. Because evil does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers and walks very lightly. When the man left the apartment, he carried no remorse, no panic. He carried consequences, but not emotion. And while the entire building slept, a life was treated as something disposable. That absence of feeling did not only end a life. The arrest did not unfold like it does in crime movies. There was no chase, no plan prepared in advance. The man was stopped for a very minor reason, a violation that seemed unrelated, an ordinary moment that could happen to anyone. When police approached him, he did not look like someone who had just committed a serious crime. He was not panicked. He did not try to run, but he was not normal either. His eyes lacked focus. His behavior was erratic. At times, long stretches of silence. At others, an inexplicable smile, as if his mind was somewhere else. Somewhere logic no longer held control. Inside the interrogation room, the instability became more evident. He spoke in fragmented sentences, moved constantly. At times, he banged his head against the wall. At other moments, he sat completely still for several minutes. Everyone present sensed one thing: that something was deeply wrong. But they still did not know the extent of it. What troubled many people was not how he was arrested, but why. A crime of such magnitude was not discovered immediately. It was hidden behind coincidence, behind small details, as if justice had come very close, but still took a long detour before reaching the truth. As the pieces slowly connected, as the evidence began to speak, the man was no longer a minor offender. He became the center of a story the entire community would never forget. And from that moment on, the truth had no way back. The courtroom was so silent that breathing could be heard. A heavy air pressed down on every row of seats. Those present carried many things with them: anger, grief, and the hope that justice might heal at least a small part of what had been lost. The perpetrator sat quietly, no longer showing the instability seen before. His face was empty, his gaze fixed on no one, as if all emotion had been drained away. As the evidence was read aloud, as each detail was repeated, there was no visible reaction, only a prolonged silence. A silence that sent chills through those listening. Lisa's family sat behind him. They listened to a story they never wanted to hear again. Every detail was a cut. Every description pulled their memories back to that night of horror. None of them found relief, because no sentence can return a daughter, a mother, a child who never had the chance to be born. When the sentence was delivered, the room did not erupt. There was no celebration, only bowed heads, quiet tears falling. Justice had been carried out, but it came too late, and it brought no peace with it. After the trial, people filed out. The perpetrator was led away. The victim's family returned to a life marked by absence. What remained was a nameless emptiness, one that time may soften, but will never completely fill. Because some losses do not end with a verdict, they stay. This story is not told only to recount a crime. It exists as a reminder that violence does not always begin with fists. It begins with control, with words that wound, with silence that is accepted for too long. If you are watching this video and any part of it feels familiar, pause for a moment. Listen to yourself. Love does not make you afraid. It does not make you apologize for things you did not do. It does not make you feel small in your own life. And if you have ever heard a cry for help, through a wall, in a phone call, or only in someone's eyes, please do not look away. The silence of bystanders can become violence's most dangerous ally. One small action, one phone call, one question, can be the line between life and loss. For Lisa's family, life will never return to what it once was. But her story does not end in darkness. It lives on in every person who dares to speak up, to step in, to believe that their concern matters. If this video reached you, share it. Not to spread fear, but to spread awareness. Because no one deserves to disappear in silence. And no one should have to endure violence alone.